exactly, Mr. Campbell had to educate me on exactly what a scientific theory is. It's not just a theory like, we use in everyday language.
This is what we teach in our schools. We teach it partly because Part A is the scientifically correct and accurate view of the natural world. Part B is the reason why A is correct. Evolution happens. Natural selection is the primary mechanism that makes evolution happen. Evolution happens. Natural selection is the primary mechanism that makes evolution happen. Evolution happens. Natural selection is the primary mechanism that makes evolution happen. Evolution happens. Natural selection is the primary mechanism that makes evolution happen.
All right, y'all saw in my introduction what we're up against. Carol stuttered, said she didn't even really know what a theory was until David Campbell defined it for her. And then we took some snippets out of what David Campbell said. And of course, we're not trying to cut and paste here in a way that's dishonest. You can go watch the whole 5.5 hour school board meeting if you want to. See, we're not trying to cheat anybody here, but you can see that the way that David Campbell and the evolutionists and those that hold to those positions, the way that they define theory is as fact. It's as something that's known to be true. And the back and forth that happened during the school board meeting, the back and forth that happens all the time, is that they try to pull this kind of end around maneuver where they allow us to use definitions a certain way as long as it's convenient. And then when they need to, then they come out and they define the terms in their more precise way that supports their position. So theory is allowed to be used as something that's changeable, that's mutable, that's not quite on the same level as a law, which are immutable, they're unchangeable, they're universal. They've been demonstrated over and over again. But the word theory itself has been used for countless decades, countless generations, as something that is mutable. Even David Campbell himself during the video, during the school board meeting, said that, if you don't like where the data follows, you got to change the theory. So that's convenient for them. But then they come back and when it's convenient for them, they say it's a fact. And I'm going to be reading today some snippets. I'm not going to add any commentary on this. And I kind of want to do this in two parts because I want to do 2 chapters out of the book. Both of them are pretty telling. But I want to read some passages out of the currently used textbook in Clay County, the one that David Campbell actually taught out of, and show you from these quotes directly from the book. I'll give page number and the quotes. Show you that evolution is being taught as fact, the way that David Campbell believes it's fact. So this is a retired teacher. He was teaching last year evolution the way that he believes evolution, and that is he's teaching it as fact. And we're going to show straight out of the textbook the supports that he is teaching it, or that he was teaching it as fact, that our current teachers that believe in evolution are teaching it as fact, and our kids are learning it that way. And that's not what the state standard is supposed to be saying. That's the fight that was in 2008 was over this. And supposedly we were supposed to be teaching it as a theory as we use the term, as we understand the term, which is to say that it's something that isn't a fact. It's not a given that there's potential for showing it to be wrong. And that's completely different than what David Campbell and his people believe. So I'm just going to pull this up and I'm going to read these. And then I'll come back at the end and close out. But I want you to understand what it is that we're up against. All right, this is the Pearson biology textbook that's currently in use. It's by Miller and Levine. Those are the guys that put it together. And this is chapter 16. On page 450, it says, Charles Darwin would one day come up with one of the most important scientific theories of all time. A little bit further down the page, Darwin developed a scientific theory of biological evolution that explains how modern organisms evolved over long periods of time through descent from common ancestors. It's very, very important to understand that that is the whole of the definition of evolution. It's not just change over time. It's not just change in populations. but it's this idea of long periods of time and common ancestors. All right, and then we'll get into the rest of that in the further quotes from the book. Page 464. According to the principle of common descent, all species, living and extinct, are descended from ancient common ancestors. That word principle is usually used synonymously with law, and law is used in a way that means fact or well established. So this is what they're trying to do, is they're trying to say that this is well established. Page 465. Patterns in the distribution of living and fossil species tell us how modern organisms evolved from their ancestors. There's no maybe, there's no might have, there's nothing in that language that's ambiguous or allows for the idea that this might be wrong. It just says this is how it was. Page 466. How do fossils help to document the descent of modern species from ancient ancestors? That's a leading question. Students don't understand really how to differentiate, or somebody like me would have picked up on that and responded and got in trouble, but it's a leading question. A little bit further down the page, radioactive dating indicates that Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Again, no might, seems, none of the language that would indicate that there's problems with this, just states it straight up, and the rest of this is going to be a lot like that. Page 467. Many recently discovered fossils form series that trace the evolution of modern species from extinct ancestors. The evidence we do have, however, tells an unmistakable story of evolutionary change. Unmistakable story of evolutionary change. Page 469. Vestigial structures are inherited from ancestors, but have lost much or all of their original function due to different selection pressures acting on the descendant. For example, the hip bones of the bottlenose dolphin are vestigial structures, and their ancestors' hip bones played a role in terrestrial locomotion. However, as the dolphin lineage adapted to life at sea, this function was lost. Same page, embryology. Researchers noticed a long time ago that the early developmental stages of many animals with backbones look very similar. Recent observations make clear that the same group of embryonic cells develop in the same order and in similar patterns produced many homologous tissues and organs in vertebrates. Similar patterns of embryological development provide further evidence that organs have descended from a common ancestor. They just assume what it is that they're trying to prove. They just teach it as if it's truth. And in fact, this part about the vestigial structures in the embryology, it's based on the Ernst Haeckel ideas. It's all flat out lie. It's not even true. It's not the early stages. They aren't similar. He was caught and tried in academic court by his peers, admitted to the fraud, and they're still teaching it over 100 years later. Page 470. At the molecular level, the universal genetic code and homologous molecules provide evidence of common descent. Page 473. That's why evolution is often called the grand unifying theory of the life sciences. Same page. Any questions that remain are about how evolution works, not whether evolution occurs. To scientists, evolution is the key to understanding the natural world. Folks, it does not get any clearer than that. The conclusion of the chapter is that of David Campbell. Evolution is a fact. It happens. Some of the questions, I just picked a few of them for brevity here, but you could read every single one of them starting on page 476. Number 5 is a think critically type question, and it's not, but that's what they title it. It asks, explain what the term evolution means and give an example. Foregone conclusion. Leading question. Number 35, an explanation. Write a paragraph that explains how the age of Earth supports the theory of evolution. Remember, theory to them means fact. It's this wide explanatory idea. It's not a thing that can be overthrown with new information. Number 39, interpret data. Which of these organisms probably shares the most common ancestor with chimpanzees? And then it lists 4 different organisms. It's a multiple choice question. Well, it assumes that there's a common ancestor. It assumes that evolution is true. Everything in these textbooks everything is couched in terms of this is true, it's believed by all the scientists, it's a foregone conclusion, and it's inescapable. And when we deal with students who are impressionable, who aren't given the idea that there's even an inkling of another side, when all they do, when they even do mention the other side, is make fun of them. Oh, those are not real scientists. Oh, those guys aren't serious, or whatever. That's not critical thinking. That's not education. That's indoctrination. And it's violating the state standard as it was presented. It's violating the spirit and the argument of 2008 in Clay County. That means that everything that they just told us at the January and February board meetings, when this was brought back up by Ms. Gilhausen, everything that we were assured of by Ms. Studdard and the others, is that it's only being taught as a theory, not as a fact, as if those two things are different. And it's just not true. It's not true in this textbook that's currently in use, and it's not going to be true in the new textbook that was just voted to be adopted by a bare majority of the school board. And so, and I'll come back and I'm going to do chapter 19 in the next video in the next day or two, and you will see that the statements are as clear as day that evolution is true according to the textbook. It's a foregone conclusion, the way that it's taught, the way that it's being presented. And I know for a fact teachers that believe in evolution are teaching it as if it's true, because that's how they view it. And they can get away with it because right now the law is behind them. And the one question that they never asked at that school board meeting on February 1st or back in January or at any time is it right? Is it right? They ask, is it legal? But being legal and being right are two different questions. So those are just some of the examples. I'll give you some more next time. Again, if you have any comments, leave them under the video or find us on Facebook, Science Freedom Florida. Thanks for watching.